I actually come from two angles, one from the trade union section and one from the English Democrats, because I'm also General Secretary for the Workers of England. And to understand what future England has after Brexit, we have to understand how far some of us have travelled in a short journey of enlightenment, and that's how I look at it. I remember when I first became aware of, as an Englishman, being treated unfairly by the British establishment. In 2003, I attended a branch secretary meeting for Unite, and on the wall was promoting Scottish Parliament, Welsh Assembly and Northern Irish Assembly. And me, being new to the trade union, asked the Unite reps, where's the one for England? And it was though I just used a load of foul language in front of them. They were gobsmacked that I would actually raise the question. But that made me look at other items. I actually had to look at how England was being treated fairly, not only by the British trade unions, and bearing in mind there's 160 trade unions in the UK, only less than 50 belong to the TUC. Less than that supported the EU, and yet we were purposely put through the media that the TUC represented the workers of England. They don't. They didn't. There was a bigger group against the EU because of the influx of uncontrolled immigration having an effect on the workplace. So we then come to the words English and England. This was another thing that I soon picked up on. England or English is only used in sporting events if we do bad. If we do well, they're British. That never occurred for the Scottish or Welsh. How many times was Andy Murray referred to as being British? No, it was always the Scottish tennis player, right, when he was doing well. So this started to wake me up to a lot of things that was happening. And I'm not the only one. We've had a big influx now of people understanding what's happening. England is being denied democratic equality. Unelected, unaccountable MPs have consistently been, from Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, making decisions on England. Well, MPs in England have no reciprocal rights. Evil was and is a con. It was a purely political stunt to undermine UKIP at the time. Other nations have their own parliaments making decisions on their own nations and should have absolutely no say whatsoever in English-only policies. They vote through items which are detrimental to the people of England, knowing full well that under the Barnett formula, their nations will receive extra funding because of it. Or the British government pushes through policies on England to appease the Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish, knowing full well the other nations will again get extra funding through Barnett consequentials from the English taxpayers. Again, a detriment to the people of England. This also brought into view the EU, again with unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats in Brussels making decisions on the UK. What was more alarming as an Englishman is that it is the billions of pounds of English taxpayers' money being sent there. We are the only net contributor to the UK public purse, so the ones paying the billions of pounds per year in EU membership. During the EU referendum, there was great play made on taking back control, democracy, that the money we give to the EU should instead be spent in the UK. There was a lot of controversy around the bus with the £350 million a week banner. And yes, the banner was incorrect. The figure was actually higher, as we found out. So it was misleading because it was English taxpayers' money they were talking about. And it didn't state which NHS. The NHS is devolved. Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish look after their own NHS. So when they were saying £350 million going to the NHS, they didn't state it was English taxpayers' money, and they didn't state which NHS. Were they going to give an extra £1 billion in bribe, like the Tories did, to Northern Ireland to get the DUP vote? Well, the same arguments that was used during the EU referendum can be said for England. England needs to take back control from the British government. Democracy should be restored to England, and English taxes, the £350 million a week, should be used for English public services and not siphoned off and added to the 50 billion, as Eddie's already mentioned, a year being sent to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, or the £14 billion in foreign aid. We should not be sending £14 billion in foreign aid when we've got massive homeless problems in this city, in our cities. We have to address the issues affecting our cities. And obviously I'm from up north in Manchester, and Manchester's been Labour for 40, 50 years, under Labour government, under Tory government, but it's consistently at the top for child poverty, just behind Tower Hamlets. And that's put forward as a beacon of the north for Labour. It's an appalling state, and that money should be used to address these issues first. So England is clearly a wealthy nation. We know this because of the money. Those who say England is too big only highlight their own deficiencies. It's all about structure. What we need is an English Parliament with directly elected and accountable MPs who work in England's national interests, who work on education, transport, health and fisheries, that we're not having the borders between Scotland and England moved so they get extra fishing allocation off us, where 1,500 tonnes of fishing rights was given to Scotland to appease the Scottish fishermen, whilst our own fishermen lose out. So we need proper proportional representation so that every vote counts. We need to re-engage people. The main parties talk about dropping the vote down to 16. Well, what's the point if nobody's going to vote? You can give it to as many people as you want. The point is, every vote needs to count. You need to make sure that people get to the ballot box. I'm actually in favour of making it compulsory to vote, but also to have one that says you don't agree with any of the above, to give people the option. If there's one that says none of the above, then politicians should be looking to say, well, why are we not engaging with these people? That should be the next question. One English Parliament, then the power should be devolved down to counties, councils, town and parish councils. Welsh regionalists talk about devolving power down from the UK Parliament. What they fail to mention is actually power is taken away from local people to form these regional centres. And as an example, I'll use what's happened in Greater Manchester. Where I live, it was called 6 towns. We had 6 towns who used to look after their own issues. These were all then moved into the centralised Bury Council. The powers were then transferred from Bury Council to the Association of Greater Manchester Councils. It was then moved, which is the 10 Greater Manchester Councils. This was firstly just a committee, a talking shop. They then changed it to the combined authority and gave themselves legal powers. The combined authority then imposed the mayoral system on Greater Manchester. Although I support the mayoral system, I do believe in the democratic process and that the people should have had a vote. Both Manchester and Bury voted against the mayoral systems, while Salford voted for it. This was all anti-democratic. Nobody in the 6 towns of Bury voted to have the powers transferred to Bury. Nobody in Bury voted to have the powers transferred to Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and nobody voted for the elected mayoral system. And the elected mayoral system, just so you're aware, is just a cabinet member of 10 council members. It's not like you would have in Greater London where he has complete authority. He doesn't. So it's just a position where the other 10 people can just vote over him no matter what. He has no powers. What I first thought we needed to address the democratic deficit was for England to have its own parliament within a federal UK, for the House of Commons to become a parliament for England, immediately getting rid of the 112 so MPs from Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Then for the House of Lords to be abolished and replaced with a UK parliament, with equal numbers of UK MPs from the 4 home nations. No more than 80 would have been needed, because we only send, the 72 to the EU to represent the entire UK. So you don't need an awful lot of them. And they will only be dealing with international matters. So you would have no new buildings, fully accountable English Parliament, an elected upper house for international matters dealt with by the UK. But my view, like many other people, then started to change. I came to realise through various campaigns like the Scottish Independence Referendum and the EU referendum that England would be better served once again as an independent nation, free from the shackles of the EU, free from the British government, and if our politicians don't deliver in England's national interests, free to vote them out. The UK is dying. It's quite clearly. The report from the BBC, I don't normally quote BBC stuff, but it's in our favour, so I will, showed that 45% in Northern Ireland only support remaining in the UK, 42% want a united Ireland. Bearing in mind they voted to remain in the EU, but the most significant thing is it's now crossed the religious lines, where you now have Protestants looking to vote for a united Ireland. And as we've just seen with the abortion stuff, you've got Catholics now looking to vote DUP. The religious lines have now crossed, and people are now looking towards a united Ireland. And don't forget that in Scotland, although it says, they quote this as the big say, it was Scotland's biggest vote, 55% wanted to stay with the UK, it's actually only needed a swing of 200,000 votes. That's the population of Bury just changing their mind. Brexit is driving Scotland to become independent. Brexit is driving Northern Ireland to become independent. Now let's compare that to the recent BBC report that showed 80% of people in England strongly identified as English. This is a massive increase on the 2011 census. And in 2014, the survey by Cardiff and Edinburgh universities, not English universities, Scottish and Welsh universities, showed that 54% wanted an English parliament. England clearly voted to leave. For myself, we are only halfway there. We now need to be looking to leave the UK with the same arguments put forward for leaving the EU, just like support is growing in Northern Ireland, Scotland, and the nations for the UK. But we need to make sure that we get that English Parliament in place, be prepared, and not end up with the debacle and the absolute fiasco of Theresa May and her EU Brexit negotiations on leaving the EU. We need an English Parliament in place, then get the vote, same as Scotland, for complete independence, and now English tax money to be spent in England. Thank you.